To the typewriter, Crookshanks. Let's see what this devious cur is made of, shall we?
Oh, yes, we shall, Master.
Most honorable game warden, I beg your pardon, sir, but you seem to suspect me of criminal activities, as if I were a dastardly forest brigand, or worse, some sort of Republic serial villain. I am neither, sir, and I assure you that my activities are purely recreational in nature. Furthermore, I would never imagine to transgress the terms upon which we agreed. I am available at your leisure and by your grace to discuss this matter further should you wish to repeat your ridiculous accusations in person. That said, I'm pleased you enjoyed the tomatoes. All best wishes and encouragement. Adrian Veidt. What do you think, Miss Crookshanks?
This'll have him quaking in his boots, Master. I'll have it sent right away.
Have Mr. Phillips restring my bow and saddle up Bucephalus. I hunt again at midnight.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Watching Watchmen. I'm
Jimbob.
And I'm your host, Joe.
I'm the other host, Jimbob.
Who steps on toes constantly.
Well, I should go first sometimes, too.
Why don't you take it? Go ahead.
I'm Jimbob.
You got to start first. Say welcome to Watching Watchmen.
Welcome to Watching Watchmen. And this is... Damn it, I'm bad at this.
And that's why I go first.
We are
watching...
One drink in. Oh.
We are one drink in. Welcome to another episode of Watching Watchmen.
Are we going with this?
I'm Joe.
I'm Jimbob.
And we are one drink in. Nailed it.
Okay.
3 episodes in, everybody. Hopefully, this isn't the first time you've tuned in. Hopefully, you guys are avid fans. And
if it is the first time you've tuned in, you're probably very confused.
We usually sound much more professional.
Do we?
Her? Episode 3. She was killed by space junk.
She was. Who's she?
Who's the space junk? I have my theories. Jimmy, you go first.
Well, I think she probably refers to our favorite superheroine, former superheroine, Laurie Blake, formerly Laurie Juspecic, formerly the Silk Spectre number 2, formerly the comedian.
Ah, she did go by that briefly.
Currently known as Laurie Blake.
So she was killed by space junk.
Spoiler alert.
She died. Did you guys see the episode?
By the way, we spoil everything in this podcast, so
yes.
If you don't like spoilers, what are you even doing here?
Yeah, why are you watching?
I tell you this every episode.
The title of our podcast is Watching Watchmen. So if you haven't watched, I guess you could just listen to us describe what happens. That's almost as entertaining, I think.
I hope so.
Yes, she was killed by space junk. So that could... she didn't actually die. So she wasn't killed by space junk. Yet.
She's a clone.
Oh, Jesus. We're going to go down that road?
Created by Ozymandias.
Nonsense.
Maybe she's an elder Miss Crookshanks.
All right. Let's only serious theories here, Jimmy. We're a very serious podcast here.
No theories are really serious. I mean, they're getting pretty ridiculous on the internet.
They get pretty kooky. So yeah, she didn't die. What do you think she was killed by space junk means?
She was almost killed by some Earth junk that seemed to fall from space.
Very true.
Episode.
That's true. Any other space junk that we saw in the episode?
Unfortunately, no. This episode contained no nudity.
Just some toys. What would you consider that? What kind of a?
Certainly not junk. Did you see it?
It's high-end shit. It's shiny. Looks huge. Yeah, no,
very
that's some
huge.
Primo stuff, I'm sure.
Laurie Blake is a hell of a woman.
So yeah, the space junk could refer to the toy modeled after
Dr. Manhattan's space junk.
He is in space,
And he
presumably.
has junk.
He loves showing
really
off his
kind
junk.
of the main focus.
It's one of his defining characteristics.
A
Is
large part of the graphic novel is shots of his junk.
it really should be its own character. It's also a lyric in a Devo song. Space Junk, I think, is the name of the song.
Is that the song we hear in the episode when Lori tells Alexa to play Devo?
It wasn't Alexa. We don't live in our world. She was talking to it looked like a sharper image multi-disc CD player. Haven't seen one of those in quite a few years. Yeah, mine doesn't have voice activation.
So it's sort of like a hybrid of our world's tech and their world.
Or she's actually got a remote in her hand and she just talks to it, but then actually hits the play button. It just makes her feel better, as if it's responding to commands. Yeah. So the episode starts off, and we've got Lori in the Manhattan booth.
Yeah. So
calling, presumably speaking to Dr. Manhattan on Mars.
Her ex, calling her ex, which is very healthy.
Right, exactly. We've all been there, probably. So she's dialing out there, and you notice that it's a pretty funny looking booth, isn't it? Looks like an old phone booth. You don't see a whole lot of phone booths anymore.
And blue and smooth and hard.
And it gets the job done.
It apparently does.
At the speed of light.
Only 4 minutes.
So some nerdy Redditor had pointed out that the time it takes for light to reach Mars is...
I take offense to that.
Were you that nerd?
Nerdy Redditor.
Apparently it takes longer. Whatever. The technology for this booth is faster than the speed of light. Did you catch that? Yeah,
well, maybe. I think it might have been saying that, like maybe that's when it would be transmitted. I don't know if it, they might... The recording in the booth might say that it'll reach there at such and such, in 4 minutes or whatever, when it might not actually.
Yeah.
Can you really trust the booth to be 100% accurate with its, projections on when the transmission's going to arrive?
If you can't trust the booth, who can you trust?
Well, no one. That's the point, isn't it?
Who watches the booth? Lady True.
Lady True. Speaking of Lady True, did you know that Lady True, who I'm hoping we'll learn about in the next episode, she gets her name from a Vietnamese folk hero?
No.
Called Lady True?
It sounds vaguely familiar. I might have read something about... Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, but refresh my memory.
So similar to Ozymandias sort of taking his aesthetic and his name from Alexander the Great and classical heroes like that, Lady True is named for a Vietnamese woman warrior who's sometimes called like the Joan of Arc of Vietnam.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. She and apparently a pretty big badass too, known for like killing sharks, being quoted as saying like she would never bend over as any man's concubine, blah. Can't talk today. I'm getting over a cold or something. But I'm here with you people because I want to do this for you guys.
We're here for you.
On the internet.
Yeah. So getting way off topic with Lady True, who hasn't even made an appearance in the show yet. But we do see True. It was a True Industries something on the blue booth. So that they're behind the technology for the phone booth to Mars, basically. But going back to the speed of light, apparently tachyons. I don't know enough about it, but if you were to study tachyons, you could potentially go faster than the speed of light.
Transmit faster than light.
So that's a whole part of why we'd want to look into tachyons.
Like ways to use, or at least they're working on ways to use like quantum entanglement to send information faster than light. So maybe in this world they have something like that.
It's highly possible.
Who knows?
Who knows? You do notice that the booth basically says that the transmission is outgoing only. So that implies that there's going to be no return message from Mars.
Maybe that's so that people aren't disappointed when Dr. Manhattan ghosts them.
As he typically does. Even his ex doesn't even...
When he ghosts you, he like ghosts off to Mars.
He's been gone for 30 years.
He teleports away.
And she's like, I see you on TV, John. I see your blue body glowing on Mars. Don't pretend like you can't hear me. So what else? We see
So she decides to following the legacy of her father, which is interesting. She opens with a joke. The joke is actually also about a daughter following the legacy of her father, which is interesting, I think, because so Lori in the comic book is, like a pretty easy character to ignore. She's like molded and pressured to follow in the legacy of her mom. Mm-hmm. She becomes the second Silk Spectre, just like sexy crime fighter without much else going for her. So I think it's appropriate that in the show she kind of has, completely rejected all that and started instead following what might be her truer nature and following in the footsteps of the comedian.
Yeah.
Her dear old dad.
I like that. And as she's telling the joke about the bricklayer's daughter, we see her stepping out of a cab, and there's an advertisement for American Hero Story with none other than the comedian featured on top of the
Comedy
taxi.
leads to tragedy, I think is the
begets.
subtitle.
I think
Begets,
comedy
yes.
begets tragedy.
Forgive me.
I forgive you. This once. Don't let it happen again.
Yes, sir.
Anything else we want to talk about with that? We get the setup basically for the joke.
We do see a shot of the Washington Monument, which is kind of cool. It looks a little different than in our world.
Do we not have a floating ring on ours? I haven't been in a while.
Not yet, anyway.
It looked like it was basically just like a bird house. There were tons of birds sitting on the ring.
Birds or those people? I thought those were people like a tourist platform.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
You can go up to the top of the Washington Monument and
spin around on the ring, perhaps. Yeah, seems safe.
I don't know. Could be. I don't know. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was birds.
What did you guys, listeners at home, what did you think? Birds or people?
Settle this for us. We have a bet.
Was it a bird or a plane up in the sky?
It was Superman.
Well, that's just nonsense. There are no Supermen in Watchmen.
There's one.
Superman is real, and he's American.
Ooh, God is real, and he is American.
Is that what they? No, that's not what they said.
He was misquoted.
Then we see the scene of Lori going into the bank, right? This is the bank scene. So she's telling the joke. She gets out of the cab, goes in there, robs the bank, but we find out it's just a FBI sting to catch vigilantes.
Mr. Shadow.
Mr. Shadow, the notorious Mr. Shadow, with his bolas and smoke bombs and deep gravelly voice
and Batman outfit.
Perfect.
Which is kind of cool because it's like, she's kind of embraced a new side to like superheroing in a way. Like she sets up stings to catch him. I feel like the superhero life isn't really out of her blood yet. She's just channeling it differently. She seems to have some bad feelings towards vigilantes, though. Why would she have bad feelings toward vigilantes?
I can't think of a single reason, personally. Listeners at home? And we pass, as she's walking in there, you see some other guy in the bank reading a newspaper, and one of the headline is Grisham retires from Supreme Court. Gershom? George Gershom?
Oh.
That guy.
Is he a Supreme Court justice?
Apparently in this world. Just goes, that we got a little pattern of Damon Lindelof putting real life people in his fictional world as political figures.
Like Rush Limbaugh.
Well, we'll get to that. The Peteypedia files. Oh boy. Wait till the end, listeners. We got some good Peteypedia juice for you.
Human Peteypedia juice?
Oh my. Great scene. I loved the idea of Lori kind of working on the other end of it. She's now taking down vigilantes instead of being a vigilante. Mm-hmm. She's damn good at it. And
vigilantes, I like how her whole character kind of highlights that if this were to happen, if people dressed up as superheroes, it's really kind of stupid. Like when she approaches Pirate Jenny and Red Scare and she's like, wow, cool. You guys are doing a thing. It's obviously ridiculous. And so I think, it's a really cool way of kind of putting that in the audience's face.
Right. But it's also almost hypocritical because she herself did the costume vigilante thing for quite some time.
She did, but that's kind of why she has the better perspective for highlighting the absurdity of it.
She's an adult now.
And she's a comedian.
Comedian.
He was all about pointing out the absurdity of everything they were doing too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's great. She's basically, becoming her father. A little combination of her father and her mother.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe mostly her father.
A little bit of both. Yeah. So that scene ends with her taking down Mr. Shadow. Not the Revenger. Not the Revenger, just Revenger. That was last month.
Mr. Shadow, I don't know if this is like an intentional Easter egg or whatever. It's just something I noticed that like Mr. Shadow is also what they call the like evil entity in the Fifth Element. I don't know if you remember like Zorg's like Gary Oldman's character, his receptionist like comes into his office and he's like, no calls, and she's like, well, you said not to interrupt you unless it was Mr. Shadow, and it's Mr. Shadow. And so he gets a call from this evil planet. And so maybe, I don't know. It could be a reference, but
could be. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the guy is a fan of the Fifth Element. Yeah, it's very cool. I wish he would dress up as the Mila Jovovich's character from the Fifth Element. If that would have been his costume.
Mr. Shadow?
Sure, why not? I'd watch it. What, it's okay for her to wear it, but not okay for him?
No, it's fine.
He can totally wear it.
He might pull it off. I don't know.
It might look better than Dr. Manhattan's little Speedo.
Who should wear that is Jeremy Irons.
I would.
Ozymandias.
For sure. Oh, man, Jeremy Irons.
Right?
That man. Before we get too off topic, that we get back to Laurie going back to her.
Are we ever really on topic?
For I'd say about 10% of the time. That's generous. 3% of the time we're on topic. Until you get us derailed.
Well, you know what? I'm going to do it. That's what we do.
Welcome to Derailed, the podcast where we just go completely off topic and...
You know what? I'd listen to that.
Derailed?
We should do it.
All right. Nobody steal that. That's a pretty good name. We're going to write that down. We see her apartment, and she's living alone. She's got a kind of a lonely life. It seems a little sad.
Austere looking apartment, too. It's really clean. Almost like a hotel room, it felt like.
Yeah.
To me.
Did it give you vibes of the comedian's apartment at all?
No, but you know, could be.
both living alone, former
like he had
vigilantes,
like pornographic art on the walls and stuff.
Yeah,
like his was more like a sort of a trashy guy who
Bachelor
became
pad.
rich. Yeah,
right.
Trying to be classy, but is actually still just kind of a scumbag.
Yeah, she's got some pretty cool artwork on the wall, though. We see that
Andy Warhol style.
Andy Warhol, which might actually be an Andy Warhol original in this world.
That's true. Yeah,
I think he is referenced in the graphic novel,
at least in the Zack Snyder movie.
At least in the Zack Snyder movie. Yeah, exactly. So awesome piece of art there. You've got Night Owl, Ozymandias, Dr. Manhattan, and in the bottom right, you got
none other than Silk Spectre.
Silk Spectre,
which is like, first of all, like the shot in which that piece is revealed is kind of amazing.
Beautiful shot,
obscuring it, and then we see Laurie in the painting version
right
at the end of that scene, and we also. You might notice that the Jeremy or the Ozymandias portrait, like, definitely foreshadows what we see later in the episode. Is Jeremy Irons dons full Ozymandias regalia.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
certainly drawn in the likeness of Jeremy Irons. So that not only is it just an awesome looking painting that I think I want
it too
in my own house, but it also kind of foreshadows what the joke that she tells. It starts off talking about Night Owl. Then you got Ozymandias, the smartest man alive, Dr. Manhattan, the blue god, and then ends with the girl that everyone forgot about.
Saw it first.
And she was obscured by her. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Beautiful. God. It's almost as if they did that on purpose.
No way.
Yeah, I know. Just
got to be
a great coincidence.
Damon Lindelof is not that smart.
No, certainly. We give him too much credit. We also see that she's got the owl.
A pet owl in a cage.
What's the owl's name?
Who?
The owl.
Who?
The owl. The mother. All right.
The owl?
I'll look it up later. Then we get she gets her briefcase and puts in the code, familiar code. Where have we seen that?
Wallace. Both the code and the briefcase with the glow emitting from inside is reminiscent of the Pulp Fiction briefcase that Jules and and Vincent Vega retrieve on behalf of Marcellus Wallace.
Which quite possibly had a gigantic dildo, which explains their shocked reaction when they look at it.
Might be.
So I think we've solved...
Or their awed reaction, like, oh, wow. Is that what I think it is?
Only I think in Pulp Fiction it glows gold, right? Isn't it kind of like a gold aura? So perhaps it's a golden...
Maybe. He has a golden phallus.
Member. Yeah. Who knows?
Gold member, like that movie.
Derailed. And then we get a knock at the door. So she opens it up. We don't know what it is. I mean, we know because we've seen it a couple times, but first time viewers, they see the glow of the briefcase and she's getting excited about it and gets interrupted by a knock at the door. So she has to pause Devo, which...
We get Senator Buzzkill.
Joe Keane over here. Left 3 messages for her at her office. So he's trying to get a hold of her. He wants to send Lori to Tulsa, Oklahoma to investigate the murder of Chief Judd Crawford.
Judd Crawford.
And she says, what, fucking Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Not too excited to go there. But yeah, she's apparently the best when it comes to hunting down masked vigilantes. And Joe Keane seems to think that it wasn't the 7th Cavalry, but rather a vigilante that might have murdered Judd.
Yeah, because apparently the 7th Cavalry, as we saw in episode 1, like to take credit for killing cops with elaborate videos.
Right.
And so we also learn, that Joe Keane apparently spearheaded the what they call the Defensive Police Act, where police wear masks and
DOPA.
Yes.
Great name for...
I mean, we have similar names for our laws.
We do.
In our world.
So yeah, we get Lori's going to Oklahoma. Cut to her going into the FBI headquarters. We get this cool scene where she's walking in to an elevator and it's Lori surrounded by, 10 different men. Mm-hmm. Kind of starts indicating that she's one of the only female employees there. And she proceeds to the little boardroom or wherever.
The briefing room.
And yeah, I looked around. She seemed to be the only female agent in a bunch of male agents. Mm-hmm. Just interesting.
I think it's also interesting how when Joe Keane was in her apartment, he I think you mentioned this a little bit during our Just the Sip. He kind of holds Dan Dryberg's imprisonment over her as a way to get her to go to Tulsa.
Yeah, she accuses him of just going after the presidency, and he says, when I'm president, I'll be able to pardon anybody, including
an owl out of
the cage. God, that's just such a great line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that tells us a little bit about Lori's motivation, that she's still got a thing for Dryberg, even if it's just like a friendship thing. Like she doesn't want him to be in prison.
Right. Well, so it sounds like, for a while she was hanging around with Dan under different surnames. They changed their names. That was the last we saw of them in the graphic novel. Uh-huh. And then I guess the FBI ended up catching both of them. She ends up becoming an FBI agent and he ends up in federal prison.
So yeah, apparently they're using his imprisonment to coerce her into catching other vigilantes.
So it just begs the question, what went on between Dan and Lori? Where are they? What are their...
It also raises questions about like what she actually wants. Like maybe she doesn't really have it in for superheroes, but she's doing it because she has to.
Quite possibly. I'm sure it's a lot going on. She's got some bitter feelings for sure towards the vigilantes. I don't think she minds taking these guys down at all. She seems to take some pleasure in it. What does she call he's not a hero, he's a fucking joke. Oh, a joke.
Total reference to her father.
Yes.
Right from the beginning.
Clearly a Rorschach reference. Good joke.
Her father Rorschach.
Oh my. Where were we? So the FBI scene, she wants to go along. We basically get the head of the FBI being just a very disrespectful, angry man. Judd Crawford hanging from the tree.
Well, I mean,
H-I-N-G-I-N-G. What is this?
He's got a good style. He's got style to his briefing.
Certainly high levels of professionalism in the FBI.
So for a minute, some of those slides during the briefing, if you're so inclined to be the kind of person to like pause and look at them, like I don't know why you do that.
If not, don't worry, we are those guys that paused it and looked it over.
So I noticed like they have a file on Judd. We find out, not much, but
he's deceased apparently. When did that happen?
Find out his social security number, date of birth, all that shit.
By the way, hold on. But did you notice the social security number? How many digits?
I didn't.
It's more than what we have. So
it's 11 digits.
It's 11 digits. It seemed like a different format. You got like the 3, 2, 4. I think it was an extra digit on there. Oh. So just another things are similar but different in this world.
Interesting. Also in Angela's file, though, aside from mentioning that, she was born in Saigon, it does mention that she is Sister Knight. It like her superhero alias is in the FBI's files.
So that tells me that all these superhero aliases, unknown to the public, but known to the FBI.
They know everything.
They do.
They're watching you through your phone.
They also on Angela's file, they mentioned that she's got 3 adopted children, and then it references another file, but it's obscured. You don't see the name of it. Yeah, you just see it. What looks like WHO, but I'm assuming it's White Christmas, White Night. But it doesn't quite look like White Knight, so it's almost like they want you to think it was White Knight, but perhaps it's something else.
Did you say WHO?
Yeah,
like who?
Well, there you have it. We just broke the case.
I think this owl might be the crux of the whole thing.
And that's why Lori has it kept under lock and key in her apartment.
If she releases the owl, then Angela's adopted son Topher will evolve into his final form of the second Dr. Manhattan.
And thusly frees Ozymandias from his prison on Mars.
And will then release the second squid.
And resurrect Rorschach. Jesus Christ. So it's just interesting that it's obscured. It seems like it would be referring to White Knight, but it also could be referring to the name of her former partner. I don't know if that's a clue.
What was the name of her?
We don't know. We've just heard.
It was something Doyle.
Oh, maybe you're right. Doyle does sound familiar.
Yeah, because Crawford in the hospital scene mentioned, or she asks about Doyle, and then he mentions that he got White Knighted.
That's what they're calling it now. White Knighted.
That's what I'm calling it.
By the way, White Knight, Judd had the White King and Queen chess piece.
Oh.
A knight is also
Sister
a horse riding chess piece.
That's true.
It's all coming together.
Sister Knight is a black knight. Is there a white knight? I don't know.
The White Knight. We have the White Knight, so yeah. Stay tuned, everybody.
Interesting.
So then we're back in the FBI briefing room. She, the head of the FBI is going to send the whole crew, and Lori says, "No, just that'll scare the Tulsa residents. They won't cooperate. I'll go alone." He insists that she bring somebody, and she picks Petey.
Yeah. So a little before that, he yells at Petey for putting
the
Rorschach's journal in the slideshow, which he felt was appropriate for psychological context, and because the 7th Cavalry wear some kind of mask.
Right. Why would a Rorschach's diary entry be relevant to the 7th Cavalry?
Yeah. So our FBI dude. Our boss dude.
I think that's his official title.
Yeah, the boss dude.
The boss dude.
He immediately, he doesn't even address the Rorschach masks. He just says they're Klansmen with different masks.
Right. Which
I think it plays into my personal theory that law enforcement is convinced that the 7th Cavalry are basically the same as the Klan. They're white supremacists or whatever. But I think that's a misdirect. I think they're not.
I'm definitely open to that. It certainly seems too
tell.
Yeah, right. Too convenient. Everybody keeps saying that they're KKK, basically, but yeah, I think there's more to the story there. Another thing I noticed, going back to Angela's slide, you mentioned that says AKA Sister Knight. It also says owner of Milk in Hanoi, in parentheses, still yet to open.
Yeah, her bakery.
So that's funny. We just keep getting reference to how that bakery is never going to open.
I can't wait till it does. I want to try her moon cakes.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it'll happen any day now.
A couple months, she said.
Couple months. And then also Judge Crawford, his weight was 190 pounds.
Almost 200.
Almost 200.
So if someone could lift 200 pounds, they'd be able to lift Judd Crawford.
Unless they can only lift 200 pounds, and anything less than that, they can't.
Why would you not be able to lift less than 200?
Look, I'm just saying he was very specific about the number 200.
Well, that's true. That's
We're
true.
going to take him at his literal word. Who knows what's going on?
We do know that a dead body has the same number of particles as a live one.
We have established
so probably
this.
weigh about the same.
And also Judd Crawford is a friend of Joseph Keene, which we get some backstory on that through some of the Peteypedia files.
Yeah, so Petey, being the huge nerd that he is,
He's a bit of a nerd.
maintains the computer system that we all get to enjoy as Peteypedia. Even though he even says in there that, like, I don't think anybody in the agency even reads it because they don't use computers.
Certainly not
That's
Blake.
nerd
Yeah,
stuff.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, so those files definitely illuminate some more of the family history between the Keens and the Crawfords.
It does.
Isn't that right, Joe?
It does indeed. I guess we can just jump into that file.
Sure, yeah. While we're on the subject of Petey.
Yeah, he, what is it? The evidence. So one of the Peteypedia files is called evidence, 4 letters.
Mm-hmm.
And it describes, what is it?
It's a letter from J. David Keene to, who is it?
Crawford, one of the Crawfords, right? Judd's grandfather,
Papa
probably,
Crawford.
Papa Crawford.
Sheriff Crawford.
Describes the painting that we saw from the last episode, the martial feats of Comanche horsemanship.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that's not the exact title of the original painting. The original painting was what the Comanche
Comanche feats of
martial horsemanship.
Yeah. So yeah, we mentioned that in our last episode how the words were
inverted.
transposed.
Yeah.
This kind of clarifies that it's because it's not the original painting. It's a reproduction that the artist created and then gave to or however this Keene fellow acquired it and then passed it down to Judd Crawford eventually.
Yeah, apparently this George Catlin, I don't know how factual, I didn't go into the history of it, but in the Peteypedia file mentions that he fell in hard times, so he was selling off all of his work. So then he decided to then do reproductions of his work, and to get around the fact that he already sold the previous work, he just renamed the same work, slightly different names, and that was how he was able to sell it as new art and then make, I guess, more money off of it. But that piece, whatever one we're calling it, the Comanche feats of horsemanship, it basically says that whoever owns that is the head of this organization.
Right, because whoever, they passed down the mantle of the head of this organization along with the painting as a gift so that they would understand the context of what they're doing. And then we see the painting in Judd's house.
So that tells us that Judd is the current head of this kind of secret organization.
Or Jane.
Good point. We don't know. But then he signs the letter AKIA, which
IKEA.
are 4 letters. What do you think those 4 letters mean?
I think that's what IKEA used to go by before they were a furniture company.
So there you have it. Judd is the heir to the IKEA
fortune.
Or Jane.
Or Jane.
No, IKEA is apparently a Klansman I am. Because that's how Klansmen talk. They refer to themselves.
Well, yeah. So it's apparently there's a bunch of secret codes that the Klansmen use to identify each other in secret. And that's one of them is to sign letters or to introduce themselves as Mr. IKEA or whatever.
Yeah.
As a way of saying a Klansman I am.
So those are the 4 letters that the memo is referencing. And then he also signs it with a little like logo, an insignia. It looks like an eyeball.
What is that about?
With also like the compass points on the top, bottom, left, and right.
It's cool looking.
It's very cool looking. Kind of gives me like an all-seeing eye vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely hinting at like a secret organization, but certainly hints that it's the KKK.
It almost looks like an eye of a certain creature we've seen.
It does look a lot like...
looks similar to like an eye that a genetically altered squid monster might have.
It certainly could resemble that, yes. But that the squid incident happened, what year was that? The 80s? 85? 86? 85? Yes. And this letter was written in like 55 or something.
Well, Dr.
So
Manhattan
perhaps we've
can
got
see the future, so.
And he was alive in 55.
He was.
Not quite Dr. Manhattan at that point, though.
True, but he also exists across all time or something.
So there you go. Dr. Manhattan. Just interesting stuff. So that was one of the files. Anything else we want to say about that particular
just
one?
To clarify, it would have been his Judd's grandfather, Dale Dixon Crawford. I just looked up the other PDP file that tells a little bit about his family tree, and so the sheriff was Dale Dixon Crawford. So that's who that letter was addressed to.
So that kind of expands upon the relationship between Judd Crawford and Joe Keene.
So this vast, insidious conspiracy involves the Keenes and Crawfords pretty tightly intertwined with each other.
Yeah, they both seem to be at the top of this secret organization here.
Whatever's going
on. We'll find out more. What else? So the Rorschach's journal entry that PD puts up on the overhead projector, which I haven't seen one of those since high school.
Right.
They're very much the standard in Watchmen world.
Yeah, I gotta love this. All these older technologies.
Yeah, it's great.
They're still, and I also like how every episode starts with the word Watchmen in yellow, but done in an antiquated technology. Like the first one, it's the old timey movie.
Right.
The second one, it's a typewriter.
And then this one, it's like the phone. Yeah. The old style phone beeping. Yeah, I just love how they're doing the intro titles. Each one's kind of unique stylistically. So the Rorschach journal entry, what was that? Give me some brief description.
So that one's from early in the graphic novel when Rorschach is about to go visit Adrian Veidt.
Oh, Adrian Veidt, you said.
What is it? I think October 13th, 85.
Probably, yeah.
And he's talking about how he's depressed and wants to hang out with a better class of person. And then after that, the next entry, which is on the same page, is meeting with Veidt left a bad taste.
It was disappointing, yeah.
Which is all directly from the comic book. So,
and Rorschach calls Veidt a possible homosexual.
Should investigate further, yeah.
Because that's Rorschach. Anything else we want to talk about with the FBI scene?
I don't know. I think it's interesting that Laurie not only wants to go alone, which I think is probably the right call. If they send a whole bunch of FBI, that's just going to make the chaos even worse.
For sure.
So she picks Petey to go with her. Obviously, somebody she can just kind of walk all over.
Yeah, I get that impression too.
Yeah, so someone who's not going to get in her way or anything.
Yeah.
While she does her thing, which she's really good at her thing. So
she's pretty good at it.
Probably a good idea.
She's a little reckless, but boy, does she get results.
I can understand why they trust her to do her job her way.
Right. Yeah, she does. She shows up late to the FBI briefing. So I get the impression that Laurie just kind of does whatever she wants. Mm-hmm. And the FBI director was going to send all the crew of people, and she says no. And he pretty much bends to her will.
She kind of does whatever she wants. She's still being coerced, as we saw.
Sure,
by Joe
but she's
Keene.
certainly got more freedom than your average FBI agent, it seems.
Yeah.
She's a unique bird.
That's wow.
Cut to them flying to Tulsa. So you got this nice little moment with Petey and Laurie on the private plane flying from DC to Tulsa. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, we were in DC in the earlier scene. From the bank robbery, the newspaper headline was the DC Chronicles or something.
Also, there's the Washington Monument.
That too. But more importantly, the DC Post-Times, which you catch for a split second in the background.
Yeah, the Washington Monument is, you blink and you miss it.
Fair enough. So they're flying from DC to Oklahoma, and Petey is talking to Laurie, basically mentioning that he knows, the history, and she's acting like she's kind of bothered by him being a fan.
Well, yeah,
we're supposed to pretend like we don't recognize famous people.
But he does kind of stick up for himself a bit and, clarify that, he was a history PhD. He's talking to her, just stating things as they are,
right.
Acknowledging that she did date Dr. Manhattan. the most powerful being in existence.
Yeah.
I do like how, and he brings up her connection to Ozymandias.
Yeah.
And mentions that he's officially declared dead.
Yep. She says she knows Ozymandias and she's not a fan.
Indeed.
And they left it at that.
And he does quote that excellent Percy Shelley poem, Ozymandias.
Yeah.
As he looks at the Millennium Clock.
Millennium Clock.
Interesting. Sort of a reverse doomsday clock, maybe. If it continues our theme of like reversing the situation from the comics.
Yeah, right.
The doomsday clock counts down to doom. I guess maybe the Millennium Clock counts backwards from the new millennium, or counts up from the new millennium, towards a brighter future.
A brighter future. The future is bright.
Yeah.
That is the theme of this show.
Exactly.
They say that the future is bright, but it seems like it's just
it's a
ticking time bomb.
Ooh.
And then, we see them land in Oklahoma, and they show up to the little warehouse where Looking Glass and some other masked vigilantes are interrogating some Nixonville residents.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically tells Petey to wait in the car.
Yeah. While she's eating sunflower seeds.
Sunflower seeds.
He tells her not to eat any.
Yeah, don't eat my sunflower seeds.
But yeah, so I think you were saying that's probably a reference to the X-Files?
X-Files, yeah. Mulder apparently enjoyed sunflower seeds, so possible nod to the X-Files.
I could have sworn it was a reference to Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
I'm not, yeah.
So when he's on the plane, he's like eating sunflower seeds and spits them out onto that Greenwald guy's arm. Remember that?
I'd have to watch it again.
It's a movie from 1995, everyone.
Deep cut. We're spoiling Ace Ventura, everybody. Hopefully you saw it. We watched it, and now we're talking about it. So yeah, awesome. I mean, not awesome, but just pretty horrifying scene going into the warehouse where they're they got dogs. They're rounding up people in blindfolds, taking their DNA by force. Yeah, forcibly taking your DNA. Open your mouth and they swab it.
One.
Yeah. And sending him back home.
They got this dog masked dude.
That mask is terrifying.
Who's creepy. Yeah.
He, I think he enjoys his job a little too much. You think that guy, when he goes home, does he keep the dog mask on?
Maybe.
Probably.
Do you think, does he like sit in front of his TV and eat out of like a dog bowl?
That would be like pretty amazing.
Looking Glass does.
Yeah, right. Get this great scene where she's looking for Looking Glass and Pirate Jenny says, "Is he expecting you?" Laurie says, "I hope not."
Yeah. I love how tactful Looking Glass can be compared to Rorschach. Like, going back to, I'm going to keep harping on this, how they're like opposites.
I hadn't noticed at all.
But yeah, so, Laurie is asking him all these questions and he's being very straightforward, but trying to be a little bit evasive.
Yeah.
But he's a diplomatic guy. He kind of knows when he's getting played, or when he's outmatched, so to speak. Yeah,
and he gets just totally schooled, it seems. Laurie, he was not expecting Laurie at all. He didn't know how to deal with her. She comes in very...
tears apart his racist detector.
Right. First thing she does is reaches for his controller, which is symbolic, I think, of her just taking control.
Yeah.
And he's used to being in control. He's the one usually... Usually he's sitting there. No one can see his face,
I mean, he was Judd's like lapdog.
I guess I mean in the within his pod. Yeah. When he's in the pod, he's usually the master of that domain.
Yeah.
But Laurie very quickly takes that power. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also symbolically relevant how he lifts up his mask when that happens, when he's beaten, and she says,
Yeah, she basically says
his name is
first and last name. So at that point he's like, well, yeah, okay, nothing to hide here. She knows it all. So some cool imagery we see within the pod. We see the familiar Rorschach pattern, but then we also see some sort of a purple monstrosity. Yeah,
with its eye.
So we get a very realistic version of what this squid must have looked like.
It looks pretty cool.
It looks really cool. It looks a lot like the comics too.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, very similar. I've seen some like side by side photos of the two of them. So, yeah. What else? Laurie walks over to LG, takes the remote. And at one point, he gets upset. I love how the first thing he says is, please don't touch that. And she just doesn't even listen.
Yeah.
Does her own thing. And then he
keeps calling it a racist detector.
After he pulls up his mask, he realizes that she knows who he is. He's like, may I please have my control back? And she, he asked nicely. So
like a good lapdog.
Right. And then, she gets Angela's what do you call it, alias from him as well. She says she knows Angela's sister Knight, and he really grudgingly admits to it.
The whole process that they have, where he says that it was a secondary interrogation or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, is that Tulsa for beat the shit out of him?"
It's like, yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, I did not personally witness any violence against the suspect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just a great interaction with her and Looking Glass. I love Looking Glass, but I also love Laurie. Just great characters.
Indeed.
And then we cut to, we find out that the funeral for Judd Crawford is in a few hours. So she says she's going to go change into something more black.
I don't know if it was before this, but there's like one little shot that we see her go up to Judd's house and like present her ID and whatnot. And as she goes up to the front door, we see her from inside the door, and there's like the filigree on the door, like covers her face like a superhero mask. I thought that was a really cool shot.
That was a beautiful shot.
Yeah. And just kind of shows that like whatever she's doing, that superhero life is still kind of hanging over her.
Right. She's always going to be known for that. Like, it does seem like a lot of people, it's not really a secret. People know her. The FBI chief made a little reference to it. Agent Blake. He's like, what, people like their secret identities, don't they? Yeah. Agent Blake. And Petey knows who she is. So I get the feeling that most people on the force know the backstory there. It's kind of like a celebrity, I guess.
Kind of. I think publicly maybe it's not as known.
Yeah.
Because, the cops didn't know who she was.
True. Yeah. You'd think I wonder if these masked cops know all the... Well,
I think in the comic book, her identity was still a secret after the Keene Act passed.
Oh, okay.
And she was like being used to placate Dr. Manhattan, right? I think she was still not known. I don't think it was known that she was, Laurie Jupiter, the Silk Spectre. I think it was just Silk Spectre 2 or whatever.
I think Sally Jupiter's identity was released though. So
I think I get that same feeling.
Yeah, I think Hollis Mason probably blabbed about that in his book, if not
probably
outside of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'd be curious about that.
I'm pretty sure Sally. I don't know. Well, because I don't know. Sally had the pictures of her back in the day.
I mean, she did change her name to Jupiter for like a publicity thing, right?
Right.
So maybe she.
I think her identity was known. Yeah, because I think the only vigilante that the identity was never known was Hooded Justice. Mm-hmm. Everybody else had their identities revealed at one point. So we get this. Then Laurie shows up at the funeral. And we get this great interaction with her and Angela. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love all the parts with her and Angela. I think it's awesome. They're kind of like two sides of the same coin, so to speak.
Yeah.
Very similar, but also on two sides of this situation.
Yeah, they could very easily be working together or adversaries. It could go either way.
And she mentions like right away that it's like anti-vigilante task force when she gets Laurie's card.
Yeah. And you can
like, oh, okay, so here's where you are. And she probably knows already that Angela's Sister Knight.
Yeah, she definitely knows.
I mean, Angela probably knows that Laurie knows.
Yeah. And she knows Cal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get the great interaction between the two of them, just two powerful forces. And then Angela goes up to sing her song. And we hear some menacing clock ticking. Yeah.
I also noticed, like, when she's delivering the eulogy, she corrects her own grammar. Sort of like how Laurie corrected Joe Keene's grammar early on. Like, I think that's also another parallel, like how they're showing, like, hey, these are, like, similar people. They correct grammar.
That's right.
Because that's what the show's about, grammar. Really.
Pretty much, yeah. It's all about correcting grammar. Damon Lindelof just wants to school us in... grammar. Yeah, probably.
Well, now you know that hanged is when a person is from a tree.
It's funny because I think we had that exact conversation
I think so
at one point prior to that episode. So yeah, we hear the ticking and I was just waiting for Angela to be like, does anybody else hear this ticking? Am I going crazy here?
Telltale Heart style.
Yeah, it was great. You see the 7th Cavalry guy sneaking underneath a little mausoleum or what you would call it.
Yeah.
Crypt.
He made the left turn at Albuquerque and wound up popping up in that graveyard.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how it was dug.
Which did you notice the name of the cemetery?
No, I did not.
Tartarus Acres.
Is that a familiar cemetery?
So Tartarus is the in Greek mythology the name of the hell, the underworld where the Titans were imprisoned.
Oh,
so it's kind of appropriate that Judd Crawford is being buried there.
It's beautiful. A lot of Greek mythology references here.
Yep.
We've got, the big explosion scene. That was pretty great. And then, Angela and sister. Losing my train of thought here.
The 7th Cavalry dude comes out with his suicide vest that we've seen before. And says it's, attached to his heart. If he dies, they're all going to get blown up. And he calls Joe Keane a race traitor. He brings up that term again.
Right.
So another term that I think could be interpreted two ways. Because, in the obvious context of being like he's a white dude who's not a Klansman, I guess, is a race traitor in his eyes. Or also that he's being accused by the 7th Cavalry of being a traitor to the human race.
Right.
By propagating this conspiracy. I don't know.
Yeah. Quite possibly, but then you almost wonder if Joe Keane is in cahoots with the 7th Cavalry.
You definitely have to wonder, yeah.
You definitely have to wonder.
He's got family ties. We know that.
To Crawford, who is apparently having Klansman robes in his closet.
Yeah, it's vast and insidious.
I would say so. My head's about to explode.
Good thing we're taking it piece by piece.
Right. And then we transition from the funeral scene to Ozymandias, wherever in the world.
This dreamlike world. Great scene transition too, as usual.
Always a great scene transition.
It's like Laurie's face, and then it transitions to that bust of Alexander the Great wearing Ozymandias' mask.
That was an amazing scene.
It's superimposed on Laurie's face and then fades in.
Oh yeah, perfect.
While he's listening to what's that song?
Something about the Israelites.
The Israelites by
I forget. I should have written. We were going to write it down and we didn't. We all know the song, guys.
A reggae band.
Reggae band.
Because we know Ozymandias in the comics references liking reggae.
He does that and electronic music.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very forward thinking, that Ozymandias.
Yeah.
We see him building what looks to be a spacesuit.
Mm-hmm. And we see a whole bunch of stuff in that pan across there. Like there's globes.
Yeah.
Did you notice that one globe is like just plain blue? It looks like it would be a globe of Earth.
That is interesting.
Like blank.
Well, then if it's just a blank globe, it could be any planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from Earth.
So there was no terrain. It was just all blue.
Yeah. And it didn't even look like any markings really that I could tell.
Who do we know that loves the color blue, who would be in space, quite possibly building his own planet?
Laurie loves the color blue.
She has some weird love for the blue color. So what if that is what if Dr. Manhattan left the red planet and made his own blue planet?
Ooh, it's a neat idea.
That is a neat idea
for Ozymandias to play around on.
Right, his own little sandbox, but he's got to play by the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Got a game warden monitoring everything. But I love as he's trying out to build the spacesuit and he's putting it on the Mr. Phillips. He says something among like, it's going to work this time.
Yeah.
And Mr. Phillips said,
feel it in his bones.
Yeah. I never doubted you, Master. That's because you are incapable of doubt. So that implies that I'm going to call them clones, I think.
Yeah.
Designed to not have any doubt. So he's,
they're just perfect servants.
Perfect servants. Somewhat dim-witted, but they're getting better with each revision, I think.
Are they?
I don't know. And so then we see that the spacesuit did, in fact, fail.
So what do you think actually happened? Did he walk outside the border of whatever this biodome is?
I don't think walk is the right word for it.
Because he's all we see is him standing there, breathing heavily, waiting for something to happen. And then boom, cut to him being frozen to death.
But we also saw in the previous scene of Ozymandias and his office, some plans for what looked to be a gigantic catapult.
Yeah, he's got a model of a catapult.
Or a trebuchet.
I think it was a catapult, an inferior siege weapon. I don't know why Ozymandias, the smartest man in the world, would trifle with a catapult.
That's why I don't know if it is a catapult. Perhaps it's some sort of a hybrid.
Maybe.
Some sort of a device that looks like it's good at flinging things. A flinger, if you will.
But, so do you think he flung Mr. Phillips?
I do. I think that he flung.
Huh. Okay.
We don't know because it's intentionally cut off to where you don't know what happens.
Yeah.
You kind of fill in the blanks yourself. But I don't think he walked because you see Ozymandias riding on horseback quite some distances.
Yeah.
So unless they are just right at the edge of whatever.
That might have been
possible.
That flag was indicating the flag on the scythe.
Yeah.
With
just past the buffalo is
like the black
is the
freighter.
infinite depths of space.
Right. I mean, it could be, or it's just the Martian surface is right there. Because so in the comic, we know that Dr. Manhattan can create like a dome in which humans can live just fine on Mars. So what if he's got like a permanent one?
Yeah. And he just merely stepped outside of the dome.
Just walked outside, it's possible and then Ozymandias reeled him back in with that rope.
Possible, yeah. But it seems like he did leave the safety of whatever bubble Ozzy's living in.
Yeah.
So my guess is that Ozzy is planning an escape, and he's testing out the suit on a clone of some sort before trying it on himself. Pretty smart, if you ask me.
Yeah, testing it on his clone servants.
Right. So the suit fails, and Ozzy decides he needs a thicker skin. He was using pig. He's gonna.
Yeah, so we see some skinned pigs and things in the montage where he's making it.
Yeah.
So he's made it out of pig skin.
Seems like his only resources are things around the castle and whatever he can genetically grow.
Yeah, which is super weird.
Super weird.
You wonder how he made that tomato tree then.
It really makes you question, yeah.
What tech he has access to and what he doesn't.
So he's got
a manual sewing machine, for example.
Right, genetically engineer a human, but he's got to use like an old armor.
Well, unless he didn't engineer the humans.
Right.
Like the servants could be given to him. Like I don't think he made the game warden, right?
I don't know. The game warden calls him master and signs off as your humble servant.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, I don't know what else that could mean.
And there's some...
And there were some, what was it? The
terms
when
of
you first came here, the terms of your captivity almost tells me that Ozymandias
agreed to
him, if not designed the terms.
So I think the internet is kind of like really on fire with this theory that this is an arrangement between him and Dr. Manhattan.
Is the internet talking about the show?
A little bit.
Huh. I should check that out.
Yeah. Not on YouTube though, because they're all angry about it. No, so I tend to think like if we're going to go into theories a little bit, like I doubt that it's Dr. Manhattan. I probably think that it's more likely Lady True.
Lady True and Ozzy working together. I mean,
yeah, why not?
Seems like a good fit. We don't really know the terms of.
Yeah, so maybe like she bought his companies from him, and part of that exchange was that she would set up like a biodome or whatever on Mars for him to work, and he could be out of the public eye and just do whatever he wants. And so the enormous resources of his company with their genetic technology and all that supplied him with clone servants and all that stuff. But there's also a contract. There's these rules he has to follow, and he's trying to weasel out of it.
I like that. But you'd have to be some kind of a trillionaire to pull that off.
Well, wouldn't you know it? Lady True happens to have at least $1 trillion.
Get out of town.
Making her the first known trillionaire.
Mr. Burns, I think, beat her to it. But
that's true.
Yeah.
He had $1 trillion bill, a single bill.
Perhaps she stole that, and that's how she made her fortune. We don't really know how she made her fortune.
Well, you think she could just take that to a bank and they'd be able to break it?
Not just any bank. It would have to be whatever bank that was.
The Federal Reserve.
The Federal. So yeah, we the spacesuit. So he's going to go look for a thicker skin. He's hunting the buffalo, and we see him ride past that black flag hanging from a scythe.
Yeah.
Some sort of
definitely a reference to the comic within a comic.
The Black Freighter.
Tales of the Black Freighter.
Tales of the Black Freighter.
So another reference to the Black Freighter is the cheap motel that Laurie and Petey stay in. It's called the Black Freighter Inn and Suites.
I don't understand the connection.
It's called the Black Freighter Inn and Suites.
Okay. And that relates to the Black Freighter how?
When is this free weekend? It's this weekend.
Yes, I did notice that. What do you think this flag indicates? Do you think the flag is, like you mentioned, the boundaries of this bubble on an inhabitable planet?
It could be, like, it definitely looks like a warning.
It does look like a warning. Like if you go past this point, all bets are off.
Yeah, like game warden's going to be like, hey.
Proceed at your own risk.
And he even like nods his head like, get out of here.
Yeah, right. You know the rules. You told me the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like another, like something I was thinking about, like, so in the Tales of the Black Freighter, how it kind of like is this allegory for like Ozymandias's doings in the comic book, how he makes a raft out of corpses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't it kind of appropriate that like Ozzy is trying to escape this situation by building a metaphorical raft out of the corpses of Mr. Phillips's?
Who will come in handy later. I think he made some sort of a reference.
Maybe he's going to make a spaceship out of Mr. Phillips's.
I like that idea. I've thought a very similar thing. Yeah. We haven't seen this basement full of dead Mr. Phillips's.
Can't wait though.
But yeah, he did say that they'll be of use at some point. So I like that a lot. Yeah. So he tries to get this buffalo, and before he can grab his kill, he gets shot at.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ozymandias is capable of catching a bullet.
That's true. But, I mean, we don't know what this game warden's capable of, or like what might happen if he transgresses too much.
Very, very true. We don't know.
And besides, he's gotten old. Like, maybe he's not top of his game.
He's not in bullet catching condition
form,
anymore. Yeah.
Although his archery is top form.
No doubt.
Right through the eye.
One shot.
Buffalo, yeah.
Instant kill.
I should say.
I mean, how many Indians did it take to take down a buffalo back in the day? I remember seeing depictions of a whole pack.
Yeah, I mean,
and you got Mr. Ozymandias over here, one hit wonder.
He's definitely a human weapon.
He is indeed.
Well-oiled, fine-tuned machine.
But yeah, it is interesting that he's got a bow and the game warden has a rifle.
And he rides a black horse and wears a domino mask and has a mustache. He's like a sort of a superhero in his own right, like a Lone Ranger type character with a black horse to Ozzy's white horse.
And he loves genetically engineered tomatoes, apparently.
Yeah, delicious tomatoes.
I love that.
So yeah, I wonder what that's all about. Like, is that part of some ploy? Did those tomatoes, like, are they going to cause them to like break down and melt into clone goo or something?
I mean, Ozzy did take a bite out of one.
Yeah,
and then
Ozzy's
squish
not a clone.
it. Unless Ozzy's built up an immunity to whatever toxin. Didn't he do that in the? I think
You're thinking of the Princess Bride.
I think that, but also in Karnak, when he was doing the toast with all of the scientists, I believe he had a sip of it with all of them.
He didn't drink it.
Did he not?
I don't think so.
I don't remember. I'll have to check it.
I want to double check that.
I do too. But I kind of remember it being he had built up an immunity, but I could be getting confused too. Either way, where were we? So
the game warden's letter, which is interesting, is also sealed with a wax seal of the skull.
Yes, I saw that. I love that. And he refers to the game warden as an adversary. Mm-hmm. And the game warden mentions the terms of captivity. He's a humble servant. Yeah, refers to him as master.
I love his reaction when Crookshanks is reading the letter and she says he's underscored consequences. Like Ozzy just kind of gives this little smirk.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, he's not threatened. He's
playing this game.
But he did look genuinely frustrated when he couldn't take the buffalo.
He smashed his 3rd anniversary cake.
That's right. This is the 3rd anniversary cake.
It's already his 3rd anniversary, which is interesting.
So yeah, Ozzy's having a bad day.
And after that, so what happens next? He tells her to have Mr. Phillips
Crookshanks to the typewriter.
He dictates that new letter, in which he reminds him that he's not a what was it?
A Republic serial villain.
Yeah,
which is a direct quote from the graphic novel.
Yeah. He's not the Republic serial villain who would spoil his whole plan before he had executed it.
He uses that when Night Owl arrives at Karnak to try to stop Ozymandias from destroying New York.
Yeah.
But he'd already done it. And yeah, basically he's saying he wouldn't be revealing his plan if he hadn't already did it.
I love that direct reference.
Right.
Right before he tells Mr. Phillips, or has her tell Mr. Phillips to restring his bow, because he's going to go hunting at midnight. So he's going to go back out. He's going to go get a bison.
Right.
This time at night, but in full
Ozymandias bullet catching gear
costume. And we finally, he signs the letter.
Adrian Veidt.
For, yes.
What do you think, Miss Crookshanks?
Confirming for all of us who might have had doubts that he is in fact Ozymandias. Perhaps.
Or maybe he's just misleading us.
It's also possible.
Who knows? But it does seem that it's apparent that it is Ozymandias. If it's not Ozymandias, then it's a damn good Ozymandias impersonator.
He's got that costume dead on.
It's so great seeing that costume. You see him suit up while it's dark and thundering outside, which is quite ominous.
Yeah.
And
then we see a shot just like in that Warhol painting of him, going full mermaid man.
Yeah.
In front of the mirror.
I love that. I've seen those pictures of side-by-sides of Ozymandias, Jeremy Irons is Ozymandias next to Mermaid Man. And they do look remarkably similar. They got the purple going on, I think. Yeah.
I think Mermaid Man is a canon character in Watchmen.
I think now he is. Is that what we're saying? Yeah, we don't know. It would go well with the Black Freighter. You could have a mermaid man. You
could have
some sort of a seafaring
boat-mobile.
Pirate Jenny's male.
There you go.
Partner.
Male counterpart.
Yeah. So we see him suit up as Ozymandias, but is this the last we see of this scene? Are we going to skip forward next episode to his 4th anniversary and never see what transpires?
I assume, unfortunately, probably.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of this.
But maybe if this anniversary is like every day or something, then we'll still find out what happened, but it'll still be the 4th anniversary.
Sure.
I don't know.
I guess what we need to take away is that Ozzy's not giving up, and one way or another, he's going to get his thicker skin.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to hunt at midnight. Presumably the game warden will be sleeping. I don't know.
Or maybe he's hunting the game warden.
Or that. Shit.
He's going to take him out.
Oh, man. He has a basement full of game wardens, deceased corpses. And then we transition from that awesome shot of Ozzy suiting up into his armor to Joe Keane saying, "I'm not the hero here."
Right.
So I don't know about you, Jimmy, but, in the comics, you've got Adrian Veidt, who hired an assassin to make an attempt on his life to throw Rorschach off the scent, right? To make him...
That sounds awfully complicated.
But it also could be very similar to what's going on here, where Joe Keane...
I don't know anything...
...has an attempt on his life. Is it possible that Joe Keane is the one who orchestrated the attack?
That's ridiculous.
With the bomb. You're right. I'm crazy. It's nonsense. Forget it, guys. Forget I said it. I'm sorry, guys. Terrible idea.
Just strike that from your memories. We are all dumber for now having heard that.
But yeah, that transition was no act. You got Ozzy with the lightning, Absolutely. And then you see Joe Keane.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're going with this, guys. Joe Keane is going to spin this bomber attack to his advantage, just to, go further with his agenda.
So what do you think would have happened if Laurie hadn't shot the suicide bomber?
Great question.
You think
it looked like he was taking him away?
You think Joe Keane might have done something to trigger the bomb, killed the dude and gone for cover, and then still sort of like how Ozymandias tried to save the assassin, but shoved a suicide pill in his mouth?
I can see that, but yeah, it seems like Joe Keane wants the masked cops to be the victors over the 7th Cavalry. That would be...
Maybe he's pulling a Darth Sidious and it doesn't matter which side wins.
Yeah. It does kind of seem like
he's
that.
He's orchestrating both sides of this conflict.
I just don't trust him because he's handsome and charismatic and wealthy.
See, that's why I do trust him.
Oh, okay.
And he's white.
So... I'm getting Adrian Veidt vibes all over the place here. I'm I'm getting a big clue in this direction. I've got such a raging clue. And then we get go back to that crypt where the tunnel was, and Laurie goes in there. And who's in the hole with some night vision goggles?
The Mole Man.
Just our favorite baker, Angela Abar
with her night owl.
So it's almost like she's not trying to hide the fact that she's a sister knight at this point.
Well, I don't think there's any sense to that. I think she knew as soon as Laurie gave her a card that, like, okay,
I think you're right. Yeah, she knew Laurie's got her pegged. And Laurie's talking about how she was hoping to, they were going to exhume the body the next day to run a toxicology report on Judd Crawford, because she's not convinced that the 7th Cavalry was behind it.
Right.
She doesn't think it's such an open and shut case.
Exactly.
And I think she knows that Angela knows more, because she proceeds to question.
And she points out the wheelchair tracks by the
wheelchair tracks, which Angela is the only person who knew about that.
Good cover, by the way, when she says, like, what vehicle?
What vehicle? Yeah.
And then she's like,
oh, great scene. Oh, my God.
And then probably my favorite part is Laurie saying, she eats good guys for breakfast.
That was really good.
And then Angela's like, ooh.
Feigns being scared, yeah. I think my favorite part was the line about the closet having the secret compartment. She's like, my dad had one, so
when my dad
I just always check.
You're just really casual about, the comedian's secret compartment being discovered.
So yeah, now that the body, Judd's body is exploded, they can no longer run any kind of further testing.
It would be difficult.
What do you think would have shown up? Do you think it would have been an open and shut case?
A couple glasses of wine.
Some cocaine, perhaps?
Blow.
Yeah. We also hear that the Russians are building an intrinsic field generator.
Yeah. And Joe immediately deflects, like, that's not his problem, not his issue.
Right.
It's whatever. But so we also kind of, there's this idea that I'm not sure, but I think, like, the Russians are kind of on friendlier terms with the U.S.
Friendlier, but I'm sure they're still,
maybe, yeah,
doing their own thing. Yeah. Like the space race.
Because they're still it's still Leningrad. It's still the USSR.
Yeah.
So if they're building their own intrinsic field generator,
I don't know what that could possibly mean, except they're building.
You'd have to wonder why people haven't tried to duplicate the Manhattan experiment already,
I'm sure they have.
Probably.
But I do think that it's somewhat of a unique situation in that, John Osterman, who became Dr. Manhattan, was an expert watchmaker, and he was just really good at figuring out how to put things back together.
And a physicist himself.
So it's not like you could just take an ordinary Mr. Phillips
of the process
and explode him and expect him to, reassemble himself.
Good thing he's got a lot of Mr. Phillipses.
Right. Yeah. But I get the impression that, that's what the Russians are attempting, because I believe the intrinsic field generator was the exact same type of technology that resulted in Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, we just breeze over that. That's nothing real. We're not going to hear about that again.
He really is really good at spinning this whole thing politically. Like, he's here for the people of Tulsa and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, right.
And
I don't buy it.
And then Petey even says, like, he's got my vote,
Right, yeah.
So, a very well performed little recovery from this assassination attempt.
Awfully convenient.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, great scene with Angela and Laurie.
I like how Angela pours out her coffee for Judd.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't even drink it, just, a drink for the dead.
Yep. And then we cut to Laurie heading back to the hotel with Petey.
Right after we see her, like, through Night Owl's goggles.
Oh, yeah, that was a really cool shot.
Yeah. And another reminder that, she has another significant X in the superhero game, Dan Dryberg. And there's a connection here, because, like, Judd has all this Night Owl connections. There's some kind of connection. Laurie's connected to this town through other things than just this investigation,
She's certainly in the tangle of these masked vigilantes' lives.
In the tangle of their lives, yeah.
Cut to her and Petey heading back to the old motel.
We hear her finishing up the brick joke. Or, we
continuing,
the God sending heroes to hell joke. So it turns out this archetype of joke, the brick joke, is kind of a famous comedy convention. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Since I watched the episode, I looked into it a little bit.
So it's where like you start telling a joke and you sort of leave it off unfinished, and then you tell another joke, and then the punchline of both of them is the same.
Yeah, right. Yeah, great.
And that also alludes to, like we said earlier, the car dropping out of the sky.
So she's quite the comedian, this Laurie Blake. She can tell a joke. It's been a good joke. Heads back to the hotel, and she finally gets some alone time with her briefcase, or with the blue member.
This is when we see what it actually is.
We finally get to see it in all of its glory.
It's got like a Esquire magazine.
Oh yes,
cover.
I want to talk about that. So the Esquire magazine cover, you got Laurie on the cover with a blue man. Probably not the real Dr. Manhattan modeling. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, what is it? Silk Spectre takes Manhattan.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of Laurie's mother, Sally Jupiter, having that inappropriate newspaper clipping.
Tijuana Bible, yeah.
Tijuana Bible. And she kind of scolded her mother for that, having that inappropriate stuff. But now here she is. She's got a very similar.
Well, I feel like that Esquire magazine is probably from back in her days when she was
exactly
pushed into all that.
Yeah.
And she still has this little souvenir of
She's holding on to it.
Past. Yeah.
So it's very similar to her mother. And it's got this theme of we're all doomed to become our parents. So she's got a bit of her mother and her father.
And that superhero life, like I said, is just sticking with her. Like, I like this, right after the bomb goes off and before we switch to the Ozymandias scene, like there's this moment where Laurie and Angela are like on the ground after the explosion looking at each other for a second. There's this like recognition, like, oh, like we're the same,
Right, yeah.
We got the like Laurie spends all her time booking these like wannabe superheroes. Like Mr. Shadow is really just a rich idiot in a costume. But then when she meets somebody like Angela, like I think there's something to that. Like the crime fighting is like in their blood, I agree. She can tell the posers from the real superheroes.
Right. Yeah. Game respects game, I think is the most appropriate quote here. What else? So we see the suitcase. We get to pull out the big blue thing.
She decides not to use the big blue thing though.
Yeah.
Settle for the more human thing.
But you see how just like how much shame and embarrassment she has when she knocks at Petey's door. He opens it and she almost doesn't even make eye contact.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
she's just a sad, lonely woman.
Can you blame her? But it's interesting.
Kind of depressing.
Well, it is depressing, and it's how she's like. She's choosing between sort of the inhuman Dr. Manhattan and the moving on to a human connection with Petey. Even I don't think she's interested in Petey. Like,
no, certainly not.
Anyway, but
yeah, I agree. But then we see that Petey's wearing the mask, which I don't know if we mentioned it. It's similar to in the graphic novel when Dan Dryberg and Laurie get together, and Dan can't get it up until he puts on his costume.
Until they do some superhero.
And then all of a sudden, they go at it. Yeah. But it was kind of nice callback to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as like this is happening, we're hearing her tie up that joke, and I think it's really interesting how like she's gone through the owl who went to hell for being too soft, the smarty pants going to hell for being a monster and killing 3 million people,
right?
The blue god going to hell because he's already in hell because he knows that that's just what his existence is now.
Yeah,
and then the girl who nobody noticed before, who God doesn't even recognize, who doesn't have any special God-given talent. Which is
right.
Also kind of like Silk Spectre, like Dryberg has his gadgets.
Got his tech, yeah.
Rorschach has, his brutal street smarts tactics. Ozymandias is the smartest man. Dr. Manhattan has powers. Silk Spectre, like, what does she got?
What does she got?
She's
very sexual costume, yeah. And she dates a lot of superheroes.
Yeah, so she's like, yeah, I'm no talent to speak of. Or whatever, but it turns out she's the one to bring it all down. She's the one who threw the brick.
That's her power. You underestimate her. Exactly. You don't see it coming.
I thought that was just a really, really cool parallel, like her character in the comic, and then this joke sort of in a simple way, kind of bringing it all around in a really big brick joke, a big joke.
It's just beautifully done.
It is.
Bravo, Damon
like
Lindelof. So it seems like Lori still is hung up on Dr. Manhattan. She's still calling him 30 years later. We don't know how many times, but she's a platinum member, so that implies that she calls fairly often.
Yeah.
We see booths not only in DC, but also in Tulsa.
And when she sees the booth in Tulsa, she's driving to the funeral. Like, there's this moment where it
she
slows
sees
down.
it, that was a great
in
shot.
that square by, what is it, the Iberian Pig? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Which apparently is a real restaurant.
Oh, no kidding. In like
in
downtown.
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Where the series is shot. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you get that moment where she passes it and you can tell that she's given it some, there's some,
So another little fun
significance to it.
theme element, like, so we got Ozymandias skinning pigs to make his spacesuit, you know.
As most people do. Yeah.
Right. And then we have this Iberian pig in the background. And I looked it up because, you know, I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
An Iberian pig is like a breed of pig that comes from like the Spanish peninsula, where they have like black fur, black hair.
Interesting.
But yeah, so more pig theme.
Pig theme?
Maybe so. Okay, so we had lettuce in the first
two episodes.
For two
we had
episodes,
lettuce, yeah.
We had tomatoes in the second one as well.
Okay.
Now we have bacon, right? So
This goes back to our salad
what
theory.
kind of salad are we making here, Joe?
It's got bacon. I mean, some of the best salads have bacon or ham.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, ham. You could have
some
bits
variation
ham.
of pig meat.
Is that like a garden? No, what do you call that? Like, is it Cobb salad? No, I don't know enough about salads.
I don't know what the listeners at home, if you know what salads.
This salad thing's gonna come back in a big way. I'm telling you.
What salads contain meat? You know, I don't know. We'll go with Cobb.
Especially pork,
Yeah.
because I think that's. Or are there any salads that contain bison?
I was going to say
doubt it.
bison. We don't know.
Bison burgers.
There's got to be a bison salad somewhere in the world. You're going to tell me that no one's
bison
made us
salad?
bison?
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
I mean, bison is like. There's bison burgers. You make
For
burgers
sure.
out of bison.
Yeah.
I don't know why you put it in a salad. You could have a side salad with a bison burger.
It's kind of like Murphy's Law.
This show is going to wind up giving us a recipe for a meal that you and I are going to have to recreate on the final episode of our podcast.
Agreed.
That's what it will do. And we'll let you all know how it is, and we'll post the recipe.
I'm sure it'll be delicious.
No.
Anything that can be put in a salad has been put in a salad, I would think.
That's probably true. People make salads out of quinoa. And that's
Do
basically...
they? Yeah. I like quinoa. Nice and healthy.
Yeah, I guess.
Let's dive into some of these PD files. Do you know when these were released? I know it was definitely the next day, but I'm wondering if it was even the night of the episode premiere.
I saw the third one come out Monday.
Okay, so it wasn't until Monday. Did you look Tuesday night or Sunday night?
I can't be 100% sure.
I'll have to look next time. But yeah, they don't come out the night of. They definitely come out first thing the next day.
Yeah.
And we got 3 files. The first one is called Memo: AHS: based on unfactual events,
Which is
AHS
to
is American Hero Story. So basically, PD doesn't care for the show. It's not historically accurate, and he says he's going to come up with a list of basically all the inaccuracies.
Sounds like everybody on YouTube right
Pretty
now,
much, yeah.
talking about Watchmen.
It does exactly. I got a vibe of that where a lot of PD's complaints are similar to.
He's talking about the political agenda.
Yeah, being too political.
And like, as if, Watchmen's never been political.
Right, certainly not. What else? We've got, he mentions JT March the 3rd, James Trafford March, the pretentious provocateur, and suspiciously reclusive writer.
Yeah.
What do we think of that guy? Any significance?
I don't know.
I don't know. When I Googled James Trafford March, it looked like there was some Watchmen wiki reference that he was one of the scientists on Ozymandias's what was that, Antarctic?
Because I think one of the more recent files mentions his either father or grandfather or something having disappeared or something like that.
I think he went to the island, or not island, where Karnak, Ozymandias' hideout, where he killed all the best and brightest scientists that helped him with developing that squid. So there could be some connection there. And the director is Edwina Taylor of dubious pedigree. she's extreme and unabashedly prejudicial.
Prejudicial?
Presidential. That can't be right. And then he also mentions that Hollis Mason had a bunch of inaccuracies in his book Under the Hood.
Yeah. He's very quick to like judge, Hollis Mason wrote a memoir. It's like, it's supposed to be his perspective on things.
Right.
And so Petey's like tearing him apart for being unhistorical and unobjective when like that was never the point.
Which is funny that Petey's files are some, fictitious documents online picking apart Under the Hood, which is a fictitious tell-all book. It's just layers upon layers within this world. And so he basically is complaining about the historical inaccuracies, but then he also goes into detail for 3 of the heroes that'll be featured in the show: Hooded Justice, the comedian, and the original Silk Spectre.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he said about Hooded Justice? Anything noteworthy?
Yeah, he points out like Hollis Mason's accusations of like Nazi sympathy and homosexuality and things like that. And he kind of like, starts pointing fingers back at Hollis Mason for possibly being homosexual himself, or, just gets really defensive about that. Yeah. Because it's, I don't think Hollis Mason was presenting that as a statement of fact or anything. It's just kind of his supposings, his musings about who Hooded Justice might have been.
And he points out that Hollis Mason was an avid reader of the New Frontiersman. Yeah. So I think that might be part of why Petey's not, I don't know, political thing, disagreements.
He goes on about representing history objectively, but his article is very sort of emotional, unobjective.
Right. Doesn't seem to back it up with many facts. No, he just basically claims that Hollis Mason was making stuff up,
but then doesn't. That the show is garbage. Yeah. And then it almost sounds like a little bit like he's trying to like kiss up to Laurie Blake a bit, especially when he talks about the comedian and Silk Spectre.
Definitely. He does. Yeah. The next one, we've got the comedian. And he's saying that he's portrayed as basically the embodiment of toxic masculinity. They took many liberties, perhaps because that JT March, James Trafford March, I think it said that his grandfather was on Nixon's list. Nixon's notorious. Yeah. What is it called? The 69th, made my list. The dirty 69th. The dirty 69th on the list. So he also disappeared. Perhaps the comedian, by order of Nixon took him out. Yeah. So, just interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the Silk Spectre says that she's portrayed as a celebrity-seeking hustler, and that they will dramatize the incident, which
we know, like, there's some truth to that, right? Like, she like married her agent, and definitely tried to like put forth this image and market herself.
Yeah, it made it sound like she staged some burglaries and such, just to seek some fame.
Which I mean, like, so why wouldn't somebody do that? They're like, what else is she going to do? Like, like Laurie says in her joke, she has no God-given gifts or powers or anything. Yeah, she's trying to make the most out of this superhero situation by by staging it if necessary, I guess.
But I love that he's talking about how this sounds terrible. I love how he's talking about the rape scene being dramatized. But he says that he would warn Agent Blake not to watch it, but she doesn't know who she is, nor does she probably read his PDpedia files.
Right, yeah, because it's who does?
Because who would read PD? Yeah. After meeting Dale Petey, that website, PDpedia, makes a whole lot more sense.
Absolutely.
He seems like the kind of guy that would name a website PDpedia. It's just so great. That's really the bullet points, I think, for that memo. Anything else you wanted to say on that?
No, not really. I mean, there's lots of world building stuff.
There's a lot of world building stuff.
Lots of details if for those who are curious.
Certainly go read them. They're not too long. It adds to the story.
Yeah, and like I think that they're kind of really impressive in terms of like they kind of predict sort of the audience's reactions to the show in a lot of ways. Like people talking about how it's just a flat pandering to woke culture and stuff like that. Like this kind of like seems to poke fun at that. Like before the fact, almost. It's interesting.
One other thing I forgot to mention is one of the lines in the PD's description of the show is he's wondering why it's even being made.
Yeah.
And
why should it even exist?
Why should it even exist? And Damon Lindelof, when he's talking about agreeing to do Watchmen, he was approached, I want to say 3 separate times, and he turned it down the first few times. First time was around shortly after the Zack Snyder film came out. He was approached and he declined. And then it became apparent that if he didn't do it, then they were going to proceed to do the show without him. And he thought, why not him? But anyway, he was talking about when you do something, you shouldn't just do it to do it. You should ask yourself, should I do it? And then if the answer is yes, you should, the next question is, why should you do it? So when Petey's asking, why are they even doing this? I think that's kind of a nod to Damon Lindelof.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to, audience people asking, like, why should this show exist? Why should a sequel to Watchmen exist?
Right.
Watchmen is supposed to be this, like, self-contained comic book story. Why should, before Watchmen, that comic book series or Doomsday Clock, why should those exist? And I think those are definitely valid questions.
I think it's good.
But it's also, I think it can be taken too far, too, because people can then say, like, if in the audience member's mind that it shouldn't exist, to decide that another person's work of art shouldn't exist is also kind of like a step too far, Like, saying that a movie shouldn't exist is kind of, I don't know, like it's like, well, what business is it? Like, if you don't like it, don't see it. Yeah. But to say that it shouldn't exist is kind of censoring, I guess. I don't know how to.
I guess the point is just don't do it for the sake of doing it. Do it because you've got something to say and there's a reason behind.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next article is called Clipping: White Flight to Mars. This one. We get some story building there, some world building. It mentions that Limbaugh and Keene and McConnell are all presidential candidates.
And this reads like straight out of like inflammatory,
totally
like, news, like yellow journalism style.
And so this is from the New Frontiersman, right? The kind of right wing publication.
Hector Godfrey, I think his name was,
right.
The author, who's the editor of the New Frontiersman back in '85. So he's been working on that paper for a long time. But yeah, this is filled with inflammatory language and right wing. Yeah, just like wow. It sounds like something Rush Limbaugh would do.
Absolutely. Mentions Johnny Cochran's great reparations swindle.
Which we also have a file of in the previous PDpedia file. Yeah. Johnny Cochran worked on that. What was it?
The
court document about the case for reparations. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then basically ends with him suggesting that we all move to Mars. This is a quote. "The planet's surface is red. Dr. Manhattan is blue. There's only one color missing up there to make our flag complete, my fellow Americans. Let's get our asses to Mars."
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the white flight to Mars refers to. And then the last letter, we talked about the evidence, 4 letters. That was the letter from Keene's grandfather to Crawford's grandfather.
Yeah.
Basically just establishing that there's a lot of history there. And they're part of
the Klan.
Part of the Klan. There might be more to the Klan.
Or there might be like part of some other sort of
secret
subsect,
organization,
secret group or something. But that basically it's kind of telling us that whatever they started or were involved in has been handed down to Judd Crawford or his wife.
Basically, or his wife.
But yeah, so I mean, another nail in Judd's coffin. Poor Judd is dead.
Poor Judd is dead. That's I think that's everything. Anything else we want to talk about?
Oh man, there's so much. Like I think during our Just a Sip episode, like I kept trying to I kept kind of like tripping over my thoughts because this episode is just like so full of details and information and stuff that is
Big
just
time.
a lot coming at you.
Unbelievable.
And I'm still reeling about a few things, like for the ending of the episode, for example, when Angela's car drops in that parking lot right in front of Lori.
Yep.
Like, what are we thinking about that? Like, is that Dr. Manhattan? Is it, whoever Will Reeves' friend in high places is? Did they drop it from somewhere really high up and you couldn't hear the airship?
Right. Was that red dot in the sky the spaceship, whatever aircraft flying away? Or was it, Mars? Did Dr. Manhattan do some crazy?
To think that it was Mars, and
that was what I thought. I mean, but then I guess you're also that's probably what Lori's thinking is that it's a sign it's Mars, but perhaps it's not at all, and she's just making connections that aren't there.
She just starts laughing like, okay, so here's the joke,
Yeah.
Here she just called Dr. Manhattan and this car dropped out of the sky and fell right in front of her. And it also, it's like the brick joke because it's the end of the last episode, something that got dropped off.
The car got picked up last episode.
Yeah.
We didn't forget about it, but we haven't seen it in a while, so we don't think that it's going to be showing up. And that's just brilliant writing right there.
So I can't wait to see what she makes of that. She's obviously going to know that it's Angela's car. I don't know. She and Angela are probably going to spend a lot of time together in the next episode, I imagine.
I don't think they're going to see each other at all ever again. I think Lori's going to go back to DC, right. And that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah, maybe Angela will just, settle down with Cal and finally have some kids of her own,
or maybe she
open
can
that bakery.
Finally have sex with Cal instead of getting interrupted every time she tries to.
She needs to get one of those Dr. Manhattan
No
toys.
Doubt. Yeah. On that note, follow us on social media.
For more Dr. Manhattan details. You can find us at theonedrinkin.com, at HBO Watchmen on Twitter. What's our Instagram? Is it at Watchmen Pod?
Hold on, I got like a whole outro here. Here we go. Right?
Do the thing.
That's all for this episode. God, that's so cheesy. Let's not do that. That's all. So that's it. Find us online. We're on every social channel you can think of, probably. Instagram, Facebook. MySpace. I think that's making a comeback. Justin Timberlake purchased it.
Did he really?
It was years ago.
Oh,
I don't know if it's still going on, but yeah.
So
tried to make it cool. He tried to bring it back. He brought sexy back, and then he tried to bring MySpace back.
He played the Napster guy in the Facebook movie, and then he bought MySpace.
How great is that? theonedrinkin.com. If you like this show, the best way to support us would be to find us on whatever podcast platform you like. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher.
If you want to send us money, we take money too.
I like money. But also 5-star reviews. That helps too and doesn't cost you anything.
It's true.
Whatever you decide. Monetary donations are good too. We'll put our PayPal information on. If you like what you hear, please let others know. Spread the word. We want this little experience that we all have together to grow.
Yeah, we want to reach and touch as many lives as possible in as many places as possible.
In the most innocent way imaginable. God bless.
And God bless America.
Godspeed. Until next week, farewell.